You are listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 300.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. How's everybody doing today? I am excited to be here for my 300th episode of the podcast. It's the beginning of June 2024, and before I recorded this podcast, I went back and listened to episode 263, which I recorded last September on the 5-year anniversary of the podcast. And the reason I did that is I wanted to be sure that what I talked about today was different. And I had written notes for what I wanted to talk about, and then I listened to the other podcasts, and I, in fact, decided that it is different. And what I want to share with you today is something called the strategic byproducts of recording 300 episodes of a podcast, which is actually the unintended results of the podcast. So I want to talk a little bit about when we set a goal or we have something we want to do, like write a cookbook, the result that we're trying to produce is the cookbook. It's the physical book. But along the way of the journey of writing the cookbook, there's many things that happen to us as people that are unintended effects of writing that book. The same thing is true for a podcast. I want to record a podcast. I want to be a podcaster. I want to release a podcast every week. The outcome is the podcast. This is what you're listening to. That's my goal, is to get shows out to you to listen to. But along the journey of being a podcaster for 300 episodes, I've had unintended effects and strategic byproducts in my own life. And it's kind of funny that I'm actually going to talk about this today because I just recently did an exercise where it's called the 7 layers deep exercise. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but if you ever want to embark on something new, you might say, okay, I want to start a podcast. And you say, okay, well, why do you want to start the podcast? And you would give your answer to why. But then if you ask yourself, after that first time, well, why is that important? And you write down that why. And then why is that important? And you write down that why. And you do that 7 times, you'll come to an answer about why you really want to do something that is 7 layers deeper than the surface answer. So many times we just go with the surface answer. So I did this with my actual podcast. Like why I want to record a podcast. And my 7th answer was because I am the kind of person who loves to be committed to journeys. I want to be an example of someone who commits to a long haul journey. And it hit me like a ton of bricks because almost everything I do in my life, that is what I do. I've maybe mentioned this before, been married for 36 years, married to Warren, who I dated in high school. We've lived in the same house since 1990. We tend to keep our cars for over 10 years. We take excellent care of them. We maintain them. We keep them clean. We love to keep our cars for a while. I have raised 3 children over the past 27 years. They're all finished with college. As a matter of fact, just as the past couple weeks ago, moved our youngest son to Chicago. I'm committed to that fully. I embraced everything about being a mom. I love the whole thing. And that's just who I am. And this podcast is no different. I decided to record a podcast about cookbooks because I love them. Go back and listen to episode 263, recorded in September of 2023. You can hear all about why I started this podcast. But it's because these are the kinds of projects I love. And I love to be a person that commits to something for the long haul and learns from them. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today, is the strategic or unanticipated side effects internally for me as a result of this podcast. And when you think about something you've committed to for a long time and you have done it day in, day out, it's just part of who you are, I suspect that you also have experienced these unanticipated side effects or maybe some unforeseen benefits from the commitment to the long haul journey. Because so many things that we want to do, and especially when we're talking about writing books and having a podcast and running a business, we don't get instant results. The results of what we do come later, but the benefits are something that we're building every time we show up to the work that we need to do on the journey that we're on. So as I go through these unintended benefits and strategic byproducts, I think I have about 6 of them for the podcast. You'll see a little bit more about what I mean. And I want you to maybe reflect on something that you've done for a long time, you've been committed to for a long time, or you want to remain committed to, and what you might expect to have happen internally for you while you're on the journey. Because we know it's a series of ups and downs. That's the first thing, is that no journey is without fear of failure, some failure, but we get back up, we brush ourselves off, and we keep going. And this podcast is no different. Times when I thought, well, maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe nobody's listening. I'm not sure I want to continue this, but I always manage to muster up the courage and the strength to continue and to do this podcast and the work that is required to get it done, because I really do love it. And I love all the people that I've met, all the cookbook authors I've had the pleasure of interviewing. Got a lot more fun interviews coming up. Met book designers, literary agents, lots of great people working on cookbook projects in various capacities, and that has been a true joy. But let's talk about internal things that have happened to Maggie as a result of this podcast. And again, I hope that you can relate to this maybe in something that you have committed to for a long time. Number 1, I have learned how to set and achieve goals. And what I've learned about that is that when I set a goal, my focus is not on just the outcome, but on the journey and on the ups and downs and the being willing to feel the feelings and face the adversity and build the resilience that I need and have needed to continue to persevere in recording a podcast and releasing a show every Thursday ever since September of 2018, now for my 300th episode. I have faced this challenge. I know what it means to set the goal, but the purpose of setting the goal, again, is not necessarily because of the outcome, but because I get to put myself in harm's way. And if I don't set goals in my life, I don't grow. And if I don't set goals in my life, I don't have an opportunity to challenge myself. So I have learned how to set goals and reach them in order to become a bigger and more expanded version of me. Number 2, I have learned how to focus on what's important so that I get momentum, and to focus on doing the important things in my life first. For me, that happens in the course of the days that I live and the weeks that I live, because I know that in order to have a podcast, run a business, run a coaching program, write cookbooks, coach my students, maintain a household, be married, have adult children, travel and do the things that I want to do, I have to learn to focus. And I'm very good at focusing, and this podcast has helped me to focus. First of all, I know that every week I need to get a show out, which means that at least the week before I need to be preparing for the show. But I have a spreadsheet that lists all the shows that I have had, all the shows that are coming up, all the people who are in the queue for interviews, people who have reached out. I focus on maintaining that list and focus on knowing that every week I need to work on show notes. I need to get out question preparation for people that are coming up. I have a flow of what I need to do with Scott, my producer, with Eloisa, my VA. I have a flow of knowing exactly what I need to do first that week. And I make sure in order to get this podcast out that I do those things. And it's just not hard anymore. I don't let it be hard. I just know that it's part of what I have to do every day. Now, I have pretty much limited the time that I work on my podcast to a couple of days a week. I limit the time for my interviews to Tuesdays or Wednesdays, and then I limit the time that I personally work on the podcast to Thursdays. And that allows me to remain very focused on when I need to do my work. I trust myself. I show up for myself. I have a process. And that is one thing that the podcast has helped me to be, is more focused. Number three, this kind of goes hand in hand with this, but I've also learned about the benefit of staying organized. Now, I don't mean organized like sometimes there's not, Post-it notes on my desk or some notebooks that are open, but I basically know the process for putting the shows together. I've created that process. I have master documents in Google Docs in terms of emails I send, question preparation I send to my people that are going to come on the show, and then also this spreadsheet. And being organized with the spreadsheet and questions to send to guests and templates is a great unintended benefit. It helps me to grow as a person, to be organized in this big project. And I probably didn't necessarily learn this specifically from the podcast, but when you're writing a cookbook, it's the same kind of thing. You have to, plan what your concept is, plan your recipe list, have recipes in different stages of getting done. I took everything that I learned from writing cookbooks, applied it to this new process for the podcast, and have a whole organizational system, and really feel that I can count on myself. I know that I'm organized for recording the shows and doing what I need to do for the podcast. Number 4 is I have learned not just to master my time, but that I can master my energy. As you all know, through the course of our days and our weeks, and even through different months of the year, our energy levels ebb and flow. I tend to be more energetic in the morning. I also tend to be more energetic during the week. I am energetic on the weekend, but not for work-related things. And because of that, I know that the most important thing for me to do related to my work and my business and my podcast is to do it at times when I have high energy. And for me, that tends to be in the morning or at least before 2 in the afternoon if it's going to require a lot of focus. From 2 to 5, I can do other things. I can do interviews. I can actively coach people as long as I'm talking or doing something active. But when it comes to focus, I know when I'm the most energetic, and I know how to take advantage of those high moments of energy. Just last week when we were moving our son to Chicago, something came up in terms of his preparation for going, and it was getting to be about 7 or 7:30 at night. And I suddenly just had this flashback to the days when they were doing school projects. And I was always like, I'll help you with anything for a school project. We'll get supplies that you need, but we need to plan ahead. And we're not going to do things the last minute at 7 p.m. before everybody's getting ready to go to bed that night. That was always a clear no for me, and it has remained the same today. And this podcast has taught me that I still have energy that ebbs and flows. I know when my energy is high, and I need to take advantage of those times. So the unintended benefit for me is I've become even a better master of my energy, really capitalizing on the energy cycle in a way that's productive and in a way that serves me. And so when I don't feel like I have a lot of energy, I don't have a lot of work to do, and I can go relax. I like to read, or I like to work different kinds of puzzles, do some cross stitch, maybe watch a little bit of television, go take a walk, things like that don't require energy and focus. Number 5, unintended benefit is relationships with other people and my relationship with myself. Through the long haul and journey of podcasting, I trust myself implicitly. I know that I'm going to do this, and I know I can do it, and I know I've learned how to do it, and there's nothing that can come between me and myself. Nothing is going to stop me from doing this, and I just have this deep level of trust with me, and I love that. I don't even second guess the showing up to do the work because I trust that I'm going to get it done. I trust I know how to do it, and I trust that it's going to be something that is valuable. I'm going to have a good time talking to the people who come on the show, a nice time creating solo shows for you. I really have learned to have a really solid, strong relationship with myself. And then number 6, I've also, again, really taken in over the past couple days how this podcast has built this identity that I have as a long haul person and how I love the long haul game of things. Everything from my faith journey to my marriage journey to podcasting to writing cookbooks, building a business, raising children. Again, all of those things perfectly suit who I am. And I think I was made for doing something like this. I really believe that I probably didn't know that in the very beginning, but after recording and putting out 300 episodes, I can totally see why I was drawn to this kind of work. And it's funny, I wasn't drawn to food blogging in terms of long haul, mainly because I didn't like the whole concept of the food photography. So make sure that if you pick something that you want to do that's going to require commitment week after week, producing something for your audience, that it is something you enjoy. And I have always enjoyed talking. I've always enjoyed talking to people. Of course, I love cookbooks. I like spreadsheets, so podcasting fit perfectly with all of that. And I'm very grateful that I picked something like this that is in alignment with who I am, with what I love, and with what I want to do. And then number 7, technology. I don't let technology scare me. And it doesn't scare me. I have quite a tech stack for things that I use for this podcast. Libsyn, Google Docs, Audacity, Zoom, Acuity Scheduling. None of these things frighten me. If you even talk about tech that I use for running my group coaching program, we have Stripe, Kajabi, ActiveCampaign. I'm just amazed at all the wonderful technology that we have available to us and how unintendedly I have been able to master this tech, understand the tech, and connect with people through technology like Scott and Eloisa and all of the guests on my show to create this podcast for you, all because of the internet and software that's available there. So it's been a beautiful thing to learn technology and to not be afraid of it, to take advantage of it, to use it for our benefit, and to allow it to help us to automate things and to get things out for other people to consume and benefit from. So those are the unintended results of having a podcast. I learned better how to set and achieve goals, learned about focusing, getting organized, mastering my energy, building relationship with myself, this confidence in myself as a long haul person, and also technology. So what about you? Is there anything that you have been doing for a long time or something that you have been committed to for a while that has produced positive, unintended benefits in your life? Meaning maybe you set out to do something like start a podcast, and yes, you're doing the podcast, but all along the way, there's been so much positive things that have happened internally in me as a result of doing this podcast. I bet there are. I bet there are some strategic byproducts for you. Sometimes we don't look at those as much, and we don't see the way that we've grown as a result of a project we've been working on for a long time. Sometimes we just see the failure or the pain or the heartache or the difficulty. But I would encourage you to stop and think about something you've been committed to and all the ways that it has changed you in a way that you never thought possible or in a way that you never even really anticipated. And then just to loop this back around to what we talked about in the very beginning, if you want to start something new, like a podcast, I encourage you to do the exercise where you go 7 levels deep and answer the first question, like why you would want to start this new thing or do this new thing. And then ask yourself why that's important 7 different times. And listen to the answer, most importantly, around the 6th or 7th why. And you're going to get to the real heart of why you want to do something. And again, the heart of why I wanted to do this podcast was because I wanted to be committed to the journey. And I wanted to be an example of someone who commits to the journey. And it is for you. And the podcast is something that I know is going to help you, and hopefully you're enjoying, but it's also helping me to be the kind of person that I want to be, talking about something that I love to talk about. So that is it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.